Hey all, Glenn Kirshner here. So friends, one of Donald Trump's boys from back in the day, Steve Bannon, defrauded people, likely Trump supporters, out of their hard-earned dollars with a border wall scheme, the We Build the Wall Foundation. And after recently announcing that he'd retained another lawyer, new counsel, to take a more aggressive stance at trial, with Bannon saying, quote, "I've been smeared by a political persecution for years. In going to trial, I need to be more aggressive. We'll use every tool in the toolbox to fight this," Bannon said. Yeah, after all of that, Bannon just pleaded guilty to felony fraud. This from CNN. Headline: Steve Bannon pleads guilty to defrauding donors in private border wall scheme. And that article begins, conservative firebrand Steve Bannon pleaded guilty to defrauding donors in a fundraising effort to build a wall along the southern U.S. border. Bannon pleaded guilty to one state felony count of a scheme to defraud in the first degree. Prosecutor Jeffrey Levinson said there's no restitution because Bannon's co-defendants in a related federal case already returned millions of dollars to victims. Bannon spoke briefly in court, answering the judge's questions. "Yes, Your Honor," he said, when asked if he engaged in the scheme to which he was pleading guilty. Prosecutors fought to stop recent efforts to delay the trial, which was scheduled to start on March 4. It also marks a second conviction for Bannon, who was found guilty of contempt of Congress. He served 4 months in federal prison and was released in November. Bannon was first indicted on federal charges in 2020, along with others involved in the fundraising effort. Trump pardoned Bannon before leaving office in 2021, and the Manhattan District Attorney's Office launched its own investigation. Can I pause there for a second? So Steve Bannon defrauded people with this, scheme claiming they were going to build the wall, just send us money. Do you think the people sending Steve Bannon money to build a wall on the southern border were likely Trump supporters? But instead of being outraged that his supporters were being defrauded, what does Donald Trump do? He pardons Steve Bannon for the federal charges. But of course, pardons don't apply to state crimes. So Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg indicted Steve Bannon for the state laws that he violated. All my editorial addition. The article continues. Bannon, a former chief strategist to President Donald Trump, was indicted in 2022 on state charges of money laundering, conspiracy, and fraud related to an online fundraising scheme called We Build the Wall that solicited donations on the premise of building a wall along the U.S.-Mexico border. Prosecutors say Bannon and others raised over $15 million by falsely claiming that none of the money would be used to pay the salary of one of the founders. And here's what District Attorney Alvin Bragg said after Steve Bannon pleaded guilty to felony fraud. Quote, "This resolution achieves our primary goal, to protect New Yorkers' charities and New Yorkers' charitable giving from fraud," Bragg said afterwards. "New York has an important interest in rooting out fraud in our markets, our corporations, and our charities, and we will continue to do just that." And here's what Steve Bannon said after he pleaded guilty to felony fraud. After the hearing, Bannon used the moment to call for Attorney General Pam Bondi to launch criminal investigations into the Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg and the New York Attorney General Letitia James, both Democrats, quote, "for what they did to President Trump," close quote. Well, Steve is not exactly oozing remorse, is he? A guilty plea marks Bannon's second criminal conviction. He was found guilty of contempt of Congress for defying a subpoena related to an investigation into the events of January 6th. Bannon served 4 months in federal prison. Okay, friends, now I have to admit, I saved the worst for last. Steve Bannon is a repeat offender. He was convicted of contempt of Congress previously because rather than testify about what he knew regarding all things January 6th, including the conduct and possible crimes of Donald Trump, rather than complying with a congressional subpoena, he unlawfully, criminally defied that congressional subpoena. He was convicted by a jury of his peers and sentenced to 4 months in prison. So yes, he's a repeat offender. So what kind of accountability visited Steve Bannon for this new felony conviction? Bannon was sentenced to a 3-year conditional discharge. He will not serve any time in prison, nor will he be required to pay any restitution under the deal. Does that sound like anything approaching accountability for Steve Bannon's criminal scheme to defraud in the first degree, a crime to which he pleaded guilty? And remember, this felony conviction comes after he was convicted of contempt of Congress and sentenced to 4 months in prison. You know, I know justice matters to you. It matters to me. It matters to us. But is there any justice, any at all, within 100 miles of the way this matter, this case, was resolved? Not the way I see it. Friends, as always, please stay safe. Please stay tuned. And I look forward to talking with you all again tomorrow.